So this here is a painting video on how to paint Plaguebearers of Nurgle. Now we've already done one painting video already using layer paints and all that from before, but now with the new contrast paints I wanted to do up another set or another squad of them. It's good to have them looking different so you can keep track of both sets anyway. So with the new contrast paints we've got a slightly different look. So if you like how these look and you want to paint them up similar, or if you want to just see how the contrast paints are doing, we've used a couple of them on these models. Please feel free to stay tuned, and we'll show you how we got here. If you like this kind of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in a few minutes when we start painting these models. So this is going to be a painting video on how to paint Plaguebearers of Nurgle, and in this case we're using contrast paints to do it. So we have 20 Plaguebearers here in front of us. There's 19 there, plus one on our handle. So we're going to use these to try out the new contrast paints and see how they do. So the first thing we did was we primed them with the contrast base, which is Wraith Bone. So once we've got them primed with Wraith Bone, as you see here, we're ready to move on to our main step. So our first step that we're going to do now that they're primed is we're going to coat them and paint them with the Citadel Contrast Plaguebearer Flesh, which seems to be ironically named for Plaguebearers. So we're going to apply that now and just to see how it turns out. So with our Plaguebearer here, we're going to take a little bit of this contrast paint and we're just going to lightly paint it right over all of the Plaguebearer flesh. Just like so. Getting a good coating on them. A little bit more there on the shoulder. I think with that we've got our coverage, so we'll leave him dry and we'll see how he turns out once we've given this a chance to set. So this is our Plaguebearer now that we've allowed the first layer of contrast paints to dry, and as you can see a lot of the detail did stick out even though this was just a simple one coat job so far. So what we're going to do is continue with the contrast paints, and in this case we're going to start dealing with all of the entrails and gore and stuff like that and all these raw spots that you see here, and we're going to use a Magos purple for that. So we're going to just very lightly touch all those spots. So I'm just going to take a little of that Magos purple and we're just going to do all these entrails here. And just fill in all of these wounds. like so. So just like so. So we'll leave that dry and we'll come back here again and we'll move on to our next part. So this is our Plaguebearer now that the Magos purple has dried. And as you can see, it filled in all the cracks and just left a tinge of the color on the highlights. So we could do another layer of that, but actually I'm going to dry brush on a different color later. What we wanted was the base and the shade, which is exactly what we got. And that's true all through the back of the model, all through all these wounds. So that's sort of the outcome of the Magos purple over the unit. So we're going to move on to another contrast paint, and in this case we're going to use Aggaros Dunes, and we're going to go over all of the horns on the top just to see how that looks. I'm going to take a little bit of the Aggaros Dunes here and just sort of go over the horn like so. Touch the other one there as well. I'm trying to make some of it pool in the top here, just like so. Just like that. So we'll do that to all the other units and we'll be back here in a few minutes. So this is our Plaguebearer now that the horn is finished and that contrast paint is dried. So now we're going to move into some layer paints just to clean up the rest of the details here. So the first thing we're going to do is take some Ungor Flesh. And what we're going to do with that is pick out each one of these pustules here. Just like so. Another one there. Another one there. Another one there. So we'll keep hitting these. We'll do them on all our models. And we'll come back again in a few minutes. This is our Plaguebearer now that all the pustules are finished. And what we're going to do now is we're going to touch up on the entrails and things like that are hanging down the bottom. And that's going to require a little bit of pink horror, which will get dry brushed over all of those things. I'm just going to take a little bit of that and just dry brush it over all of these entrails here, just like so. We'll get the back of the model as well. As well, we'll just dry brush any larger wounds that we see here. Pretty much like that. So we'll do the rest of the models, we'll come back here and we'll move on to our next color. So now that all the pink horror is finished and all of our entrails are colored in nice and pink, as well we highlighted some of the wounds that are here. So now that we've got all that finished, what we're going to do now is we're going to add some inflammation to the area. So we're going to take a little bit of Reikland Fleshshade, which is a reddish shade, and we're going to add that to the area where the pustules are, as well as the area where the wounds are. So a little bit of that, and just lightly add it around this area, just like that there. And any place where there's an open wound or an open sore, we're going to add that to it. It's going to change the color of the green, but it's going to add a whole lot more depth to the model as well. So on the front as well, of course, we have that whole area of open entrails, and we're going to shade all those as well over the pink horror, and that'll tie all our colors back together again. So something like that anyway. So as you can see there, we've added a little bit more depth and more color. As well, we've really added a lot more appearance of sickness to the model, which is kind of what we wanted to do. So we'll do all the other ones. We'll meet back here in a few minutes, and we'll move on from there. So now our Reikland Fleshshades have all dried, and you can see there's some extra redness in and around these areas. Now, before we finish off with the pustules, we're going to work our way to the second shade we have to do. So we're going to start working on the teeth, as well as the spine and any other bones that are lying around. And the first thing we're going to do with that is we're going to start with a base of Rakarth Flesh. And just very, very carefully, we're going to do each of these teeth here. Just like so there. Then we're going to do that spine that we'd seen earlier. Just like that, and that'll give us our base color to start building off of. So from there we're going to do the other ones, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So now the teeth and the spine are finished. Before we shade those, we're going to do one more thing, and that is the swords, of which we're going to do with some Leadbelcher base. And all we're going to do is just paint them up. Pretty much like so. So we'll do that now. We'll be back here in a few minutes. So this is our unit now that we finished with the sword. And so because it's a plague weapon, we want it rusty. So now we're going to do our shade, which we're going to use Agrax Earthshade. And so we're going to shade the sword as well as everything that we did with the Rakarth Flesh. So that's the teeth and the spine as well. So all of that's going to go Agrax Earthshade, which we're going to do now. So just a little bit of shade on the sword, just like that. Just lots of shade there, and that'll give it a nice rusty appearance. Instead of shading with Nuln Oil like we normally would for metal. In this case, we wanted a plague, dirty old rusty plague demon weapon. So just like so. So we're going to do that as well. We're going to lightly do the spine that we did earlier. And we're also going to do the teeth. Just like so. So we'll do that on the other models, and we'll meet back here again after. We'll let all that dry. So now that we're finished with our shade, and as you can see, the sword is definitely a lot more rusty looking. As well, we've got a lot of nice detail coming down the spine now, and in the teeth as well. So we've got all of those already detailed now, and all that with our Agrax Earthshade. So now we're going to start our last couple of highlight layers, and the first thing we're going to do is take a little bit of Screaming Skull, and what we're going to do is we're just going to drop a little highlight on all of the teeth again, as well as most of the bones of the spine, just to brighten them back up so they really stand out when we're looking at our model. So just a little bit of detail here. I'm just going to brighten those teeth back up now. just like that, just so they really stand out again. And they're just that little bit brighter than they were. So we'll do the same for the bones on the back. Just like so, just brightening that up again as well. So we'll move on to the other ones, and then we'll meet back here again when we're finished. So now that we're finished with our screaming skull, and the teeth are all highlighted out, as well as the bones on the back of the spine, what we're going to do now is take a little bit more of that Ungor Flesh that we used before, and we're just going to touch up each of these pustules here, just creating a little tiny white cap on the top of each one, just to make them that much more rancid and disgusting, because they are disgustingly resilient. As well, while we're away, we're going to paint the base Xandri dust. Usually I'd use black, but I want a separate set of Plaguebearers to keep track of 2 units. So we'll do Xandri dust on all the bases, just to sort of set them apart from the other set. So we'll do both of those things there, and then we'll come back. But mainly we're doing the Ungor Flesh on the pustules. So this is our model now that we've touched on all of the little pustules, and we've highlighted them back up. As well, we did the platform now, and it's now Xandri dust. So it's almost ready for basing and flocking. But we still have one more thing to do, which is the eyes. So we haven't done those yet. So we're going to take a little bit of Yriel Yellow, and with our very nice shiny new brush with a pointy end, we're just going to paint that yellow in just like that. So we'll do that for the other ones. We'll meet back here. We'll probably do sand on the bottom as well. And yeah, we'll see you in a little bit. So here you see our finished product now. We ended up putting the flock on the base, and then we clear coated them as well. So what we've got here is our final form for our models. If you liked how they turned out and you think that that this video helped you, please feel free to like, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. All of that helps. Reminds us that you're engaged and that we're still being heard out there somewhere. Otherwise than that, thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.